I'm that shaken, and I've even lost it. The picture, I mean. I don't think I'll ever go on the subway again. Sorry, I was going to be collected and tell you all about it, but on the way here, they took us. The road was closed and we had to go down into the underpass. Deep into Toulouse. Well, not that deep, just under the road, but I saw a drain that led deep in. It brought it all back. In the panic, I lost the picture. Give me a moment. All right. The story I'm going to tell you happened to me, 6 months ago? Yes, it was the spring. And it's now September. There's a big show here in Toulouse where all the local artists always come in and exhibit. And there was one artist, Lepere was his name. I had been warned that he was a bit of a bizarre and strange man whose pictures always caused a stir. He used to be satire and politics, but since he has moved, they say, to the depths of the Haute-Garonne, he has gone a little bit mad. He paints sabbats, and he was famous last time for painting the burning of the Cathars. That was absolutely realistic. A vie from life, it seemed, I was told. So I was curious. When he came in, the dogs did bark, I noticed. But other than that, he seemed to be a likeable chap, all silver hair, an amiable French, a slightly elder gentleman. And he put up his pictures. And my, they were utterly remarkable. Their detail was fine. He had painted a set of paintings depicting the last acts of the Templars, their trial, their execution. And in the hand, I was curious to note, the father of the Templar order, as he was burned, seemed to have a black book that was closed. It was something about that black book that gave me the shivers. I'm not sure why. I mean, it had a cover that was, as far as I could make out, a creature like a dog, wolf, hyena, but painted as a silhouette against a dark black background. Only its eyes shone. They weren't really the eyes of a wolf. I think they might have been the eyes of a hyena. Anyway, I was entranced. And then I looked at the smoke, and I saw the smoke was forming the same shape, as if it would come, but none. And then there were two strange scenes, the picture of a king dying and a pope dying. And then something horrible. He had imagined the Black Death. And there was a village dying. And in the sky, the clouds were making the same hideous figure. More like a hyena than a dog, perhaps. But it was genius. And I wrote a review for the English papers saying that it was genius. But all the local reviewers panned him, and there was talk about throwing him out of the institution. I kind of understood why, but I know talent when I see talent. It was a week later. No, it was more than that. It was in May. The other side of summer. I got a letter from him, asking whether I wanted to see his best work, that he never put on display, in his own little studio, round the back of the cathedral, in the very oldest part of Toulouse. Older than Catholicism, he called it in his letter. Well, I did. I most certainly did. So, I met him and we had a coffee, and then he took me behind, as he said, the cathedral, into the old back streets that somehow escaped all the fires and all the sieges. You could have been right out of the 12th century. And he laughed to see it and said, in broken but very serviceable English, these streets, they've seen the Templars ride along them. They saw the Cathars martyred. When the lords of these cities rose up for the heretics. Again and again. These are the heretic lands, but more than that, they are the land of witchcraft. And that gave me my link. I asked him, yes, I noticed the Black Book, the one that the friars, the Templars were holding as they were burned. Is that a period detail? And he looked at me and said, I believe it is, although you'll never read it from the official history. They did not want to remember what they had burned. And then he took a left turn and a right turn, and we started to go down a few stairs into something like a cellar, but it was made out like a house. I think the land must have risen with time, and we were going back to an old layer, an old level, deep in the city of Rose. And as we went in, it felt cool. It was a May, and it was hot outside, and this initially felt deliciously cool. And I asked him more what he meant, and he said, there are tunnels here that link you with the far south, with the mountains. And there are other tunnels that go far north. There are ones that go west and east. They could have escaped. And I knew who he meant, the Templars, and I asked him why they didn't. And he looked at me and said, because in the end, their belief in God was greater than their belief in chaos. If only they'd opened that black book, the plague that would come anyway, for the sins of the world would have come 100 years earlier, and it would not have just been the king and the pope that died, but all of France. And when he said it, he salivated, and then muttered something that I thought, but my French is not good, and when he was in his native language, he had a profound Occitan accent. I think he said, they would have been loose in the forest forever. But just then, I hit my head. I hadn't realised that we were going down now, steeply, a set of stairs that led into a chamber. It must have been under Toulouse. It was lit from above, but you would have thought it was a house. I'd never seen the light. Out of the 11th century. All stonework and beams. I looked through the skylight. The light was superb for drawing. I noted it, and he smiled and said, I prefer the dark myself. But look, these are the ones that I could display, but choose not to. And they were a very fine set of pictures. They were pictures, always with the same figures, that creature he had painted in the smoke, but now made real. I remember one took me particular. It was called The Changeling. It was a study, I thought, of a 17th century French family, all utterly normal. But in the crypt there was a child with that face that could have been a dog, but the eyes of a hyena, powerful jawed. But it was dressed as a baby, and it seemed to me that the family were under some charm because they didn't notice it. And the next picture, it was growing up. It was older. It walked on 2 legs, but had long claws. It was playing with the children. And in the final set, it had grown up. It was leaving the home, and then it was just called Leaving Home. But the house behind it was derelict, and there was just the suggestion of of a body in the door, as if it had eaten its own. And then it had a second sequence with the changeling part 2, and it showed a gruesome human baby being raised by the same creatures. I won't go on with the 3 paintings. I shivered to think of them. I had begun to fear Mr. Lepere and the mind that could draw such darkness. There was another painting where this time they were burning, I thought it was the Cathars by the symbolism, and one of the Cathars' body and face had split, and there was one of the creatures making to leap out of the fire. And then he had gone back to that theme he goes back to again and again of the plague. And with the rats, these creatures were running into Europe. Ugh. He laughed as he saw my reaction and offered me a coffee and asked me whether I had seen enough or whether I really wanted to see all that could be seen. Now, I was determined to see everything, even though up above the dogs barked warnings. It was all told me afterwards they never liked coming down this street at all. So as they howled outside, he led me down a flight of stairs, and then something like a ladder. And then he had lit a lamp. None of your torches here. This was an old-styled oil lamp, well tended. And he laughed and he smiled and said, "Do you like my paraffin lamp? Mind as you go. You need to go round the well." And sure enough, there was a large well, a very, very old-fashioned well. It could have been Roman, with a set of something like stairs going down it. And over it, there was a cover. And as we went up to it, he looked down, and suddenly, and without warning, forced down the cover and looked to lock it with a padlock. But he swore under his breath that he hadn't got the right one, but it would do for the moment. And then he led me into a very small room. And this was like nothing I'd ever seen. Everywhere there were studies of those creatures. But now, they were not painted in olden times. Oh no. They were the creatures that the dogs up ahead could have been barking at. Everywhere, out of the dark, their faces loomed. Every time a child looked up in Toulouse and cried, it was because they saw them in his paintings. I saw the modern city. I saw the creatures everywhere. I recognized it, the metro in particular, again and again. And one of the pictures particularly amazed me. It was one of these creatures, and a train was going underneath Toulouse, I thought. I thought I knew the station. But just outside the station we were, looking in. These creatures in numbers. As a train came, but in the front of the train there sat a gendarme with an automatic pistol. And it was said, the night, why the trains have armed guards. Another one said, why the metro was never finished. And I knew the story. The Toulouse metro was never finished. And it was a picture of diggers digging down while a hand with long claws came towards them. And up ahead, you could hear the dogs barking. Like there were security dogs in the picture. They were shiversome. And then I came at last to a painting. Just then, before I could look at it, he said, "Oh no, I haven't finished that one yet." Just then, there was a loud bang, 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 bang outside. Something was moving the cover of the well. Well, Mr. Lepere ran out, and in his hand I saw he had an old service revolver. and all the tunnels filled again and again. Bang upon bang upon bang, as he emptied 6 chambers, I suppose down the well. And he came back and just said, "Rats." And he didn't see I'd lifted up, and I had solved the painting. It was one of these creatures inside this very cellar. Inside the cellar, I tell you. And his face was a face to stand between you and your nightmares, lumbering as it looked out of the dark. And next to the painting, there was a little paper image, and I lay hands upon the paper image, wondering to take it, when just then there was another loud bang, bang, bang on the cellar. And Monsieur Lepere told me to leave, and leave now. I put the piece of paper, not thinking, in my pocket and ran as he directed me. I ran up through the stairs and up out. And I ran this way and that and this way and that. I could never find again where. And all behind me the dogs were barking as if they saw or sensed something in terror. I came at last to the hotel I was staying at, after much meandering and eventually finding a bus. And I took out the paper, and it was a photo. I knew it for the cellar I had just been in. A photo from life. They were painted from life. No wonder the dogs could not quieten on that street. I was going to show you the photo, but in the subway I lost it. As I ran, I have not gone down the Toulouse subway since. I don't like the dark since. Not really. I'm sure when I go back to my own country, to the wild lands and the mountains, crime and reason will come back to me. But now, every time a dog barks in Toulouse, fear jumps in my heart.